Oh. What's going on, Fireflies? Is my mic plugged in? Yeah, okay, sorry. What's going on, Fireflies? It's me, Neon MUA, and I'm here to present you with some greatness. My face looks like a flat pancake right now. I hate it, but there's a reason why. So, a few weeks ago, I did a video on my channel entitled, Let's Talk About It, Foundations and Concealers, which I talked about the lack of care and effort put into foundation and concealer launches from brands. Let me explain a simple fact to you. Fenty Beauty was able to sell out of their deep complexion shades in the 400 and 300 range within days, probably less than a week. When have you ever seen a brand sell out that caters to white people sell out in days? When have you seen that? I don't think I have. You know why? Because black people actually buy makeup and want to look and feel beautiful, just like you do. But back to the conversation. It got a lot of steam and a lot of talk. And I also told you guys that I would be doing a part 2 on my channel and talking about bronzers and contours, and here we are. Alright, so in today's video, we're going to talk about bronzers and contours. Something that has been very overlooked, but extremely necessary, so here we go. If at any point you are enjoying yourself and enjoying me and the content I'm creating, then go ahead and give this video a huge thumbs up, like, and support. It means so much. Also, if you want to continue seeing my face on your YouTube feed, then go ahead and subscribe to my channel. Hit that notification bell so that you don't miss the next time I upload. And without further ado, we're going to get into part 2 of our Let's Talk About It series, bronzers and contours. So, let's go. Okay, so here's the gig, you guys. The issue of bronzers and contours is something that is equally as important as foundations and concealers. However, it is often overlooked and brushed by. And I'm hoping that within the next year, people will understand how important it is. And hopefully with this video, we'll get some importance out there. The inspiration for this video came from actually Nima Tang's video about bronzers, and where she swatched all the bronzers she could find in Sephora and showed that none of them worked as bronzers. I think there was one that was maybe close, and that was the Fenty bronzer, but she said that also that the Fenty bronzer is more of a blush on her. And yeah, it's just a lack of inclusion. So this issue is something that I've been passionate about as well. Obviously, I'm not as deep as complexion as her. However, I understand how important it is for someone like me to have bronzers and contours and the difficulties of finding it. And I also understand that people deeper than my complexion have little to no products to use themselves. So, yeah. Also, in the last video, I got a little ranty. Things got a bit aggressive and heated, if you will. I don't want to be as I don't think I was problematic. At the end of the day, this discussion of inclusion when it comes to makeup is always important, whether you're someone of my complexion, lighter or darker. It has to be talked about, it needs to be talked about, because if you're going to push this idea that beauty is for everyone, then it truly needs to be for everyone. That being said, the approach is going to be slightly different in this video than it was in the past one. This video is going to be broken up into 2 parts. In the first part, I'm just going to go over some things I talked about on Twitter with you guys and get the response so that people can see it. And then I'm going to show you what products I have available that I use, so we can see how much of an issue there is and what needs to be done. For the first part of this video, we're going to get into some discussion. I talked about, like I said, things on Twitter, asking you all how you feel about certain products being used, if you will. Just to get everyone's feedback and so that everyone can know just how much of an issue this is. So we're going to get into it. So I took to Twitter and created this thread discussing bronzers and contours, and just to see how the general public feels about it, because with the last video, it was very blatantly obvious when companies aren't making like shades and concealers and foundations that match or work for deeper complexions. For some reason, the issue of contour and bronzers seems to be something that a lot of people still don't understand. So we're just going to go through and go off of this thread I created, and we're going to discuss this. So the first question in my thread, what is your go-to bronzer? You know, just starting the thread off just to see what people say. Some of the answers I've gotten, we have the ABH or Fenty bronzers, Becca bronzers, Milk Makeup bronzers, Hourglass, Black Radiance, Benefit Hoola, Prime Beauty, City Colors, Sephora Collection, Divine Cosmetics, NARS, CoverGirl Queen Collection, Jesus, Kiss Professional, Too Faced, Physicians Formula, Profusion, Black Radiance, Park Avenue, Illuminate Cosmetics, ColourPop, yeah, it's so stupid. KKW was a name that came up as well. A lot of the names that came up were Fenty Beauty, Benefit, ABH, those sorts of things. In terms of that, obviously we have the ABH bronzer, which is a bronzer that I personally use. However, there's an issue where the deepest bronzer is my shade, which obviously speaks for how much of a lack of inclusion there is. The Fenty bronzers, which recently came out, which pretty much kind of re-pushed the idea of bronzers into the beauty sphere and showed that not only do bronzers matter to deep complexions, but also there's still a lack of inclusion, and we'll get to that in a second. Another big name that came up was Prime Beauty, a brand that I love, greatly appreciate, which really did push what we need in bronzers as well. Of course, Benefit Hoola bronzer was a big name that came up, what have you. So yeah, there are a few household names when it comes to bronzers. We're going to get into the discussion of if those bronzers actually work in a second. The next question was, what is your go-to contour? This is where things got a little bit tricky in terms of, well, not tricky, but we see a big difference in the response. Just for you guys that don't understand bronzer and contour, let's have a makeup knowledge check here, okay? So bronzer is obviously used to go around the perimeter of the face. It is supposed to help warm up the face, and so bronzers typically have more of a warm tone. So bronzers tend to be more on the golden to reddish side in terms of what tones are used. Then we go into contour. Contour is supposed to create shadow, it creates depth, so it's very similar in terms of where you place it, obviously around the perimeter of the forehead, deep into the contours of the face. However, contours, from at least from my perspective, tends to be more of a precise application. Obviously you need to apply it in the depths of the face to create the shadow, and a lot of people tend to go overboard with contour and use it as if it was a bronzer, and so things get muddy. Contours are supposed to be, or at least from my experience, contours should be of a cooler range. So they should run more on the gray side or bluish side, if you will. However, contours can get very tricky. For some odd reason, a lot of brands, when they release contours, they tend to be more of the like ashy side in terms of deeper complexions. And again, the idea of ash versus gray and cool tone is a big discussion that I don't understand why people don't get. Ash obviously makes it look as if you are not moisturized, as if things look whitish almost, if you will. Whereas gray and cool tones are used to create shadow and depth in a perception of a contour. So ash and cool tones do not mean the same thing. Ash, however, does have a place in certain things. A lot of people tend to use ash colored products when it comes to their brows, myself included. So ash isn't something that we shouldn't use in beauty. However, the way that it's used is often misconstrued, whatever. Listen, cool tone is what we're looking for when it comes to contour. So, like I said, I asked people what products do they use to contour. And what you're going to see here is that a lot of people of my complexion typically don't contour because of the lack of inclusion. I'm going to stick with like the more concrete answers, and we're going to get into more in depth in a second. So people said ABH contour kits, Black Radiance contour palette, Too Faced Cocoa contour palette, NYX cream contour sticks, Fenty Beauty Max sticks. There's the James Charles palette with the shades in the middle. The Ray Ray palette, the 39A palette, NYX contour palettes. Someone said Hoola Light, which is an interesting concept. Again, the conciseness tends to be pretty standard across the board. Fenty Beauty's a name that came up. The Match Stix, which came out in the initial launch and again pushed the idea that there's product for everyone to use. There's the ABH contour kits, which are staples for a lot of makeup artists, but again, I can't use the deep contour kit, and you obviously see my complexion, so we're going to get into that in a second. A lot of eyeshadow palettes that come with contour shades in them. The original Ray Ray palette has a few contour shades in there that are interesting to use. There are the 39.8 and the James Charles palettes from Morphe that both have a row of shades that can be used as face shades as well as eyeshadow shades. NYX is a name that came up a lot in terms of their contour kit, or their contour palette and contour sticks. I've used at least the contour palette, so I can attest to that. So as you can see, there is a few brands that people go to specifically for contour and bronzers because the name sounds or the products are very reliable. They're staples to a lot of artists and they're easily accessible. Easily accessible is the word here, so we're going to get into that. The next question in my thread, I asked, for those of you who are fair and medium and tan shades, when you are shopping, how confident are you in knowing that you're going to find a contour and bronzer that will work for you? Again, this was geared directly towards those who are on the fair, medium, and tan spectrum. So typically those who are able to find more bronzers and contours when they go into stores. And so you're pretty much always able to find a shade too confident, pretty confident. And something extremely interesting when I asked this question, from the people who answered this question that were on like the light, extremely light side of the spectrum, they often brought up that a lot of shades look too orange and a lot of shades also look too muddy, which was interesting to me. Obviously the idea is to warm up the face when contouring and bronzing. However, I didn't realize how many people had an issue on the lighter side of finding something that's not going to make them look like a Oompa Loompa or a certain political figure. So that is something that I wasn't quite aware of, and I don't think a lot of other people are aware of. Obviously companies aren't that aware of it either if it's happening all the time. So yeah, a lot of people were saying that, for the most part, people were saying that, you know, they're very confident in finding something that works for them. For a lot of people who are on that lighter side of the spectrum, the bronzer shades were too orange. Some of the contour shades were too blue. So that's something important to know. Next question, I was like, for those who are on the deep, dark end of the spectrum, same question. How confident are you when you go into these stores? Obviously, I can tell you right off the bat, I'm not that confident, and I work in cosmetics. And most of the people who answer this question fully agreed. Not very, little to no confidence, unless it's a brand that's been recommended by influencers on a deeper spectrum. Really, pretty much 90% of the answer was no. And that's obviously an issue. Obviously, we're here to talk about why contours and bronzers aren't working for people, and this poll of questions is showing that. So, moving on to the nitty-gritty of this situation. The next question I asked was, name your favorite contour and bronzer below. Does this company make a shade for someone of my complexion or darker? So, we have people who mentioned, you know, a lot of the shades that, or the brands that were mentioned earlier. Some people didn't answer the question, and I'm assuming that they know why, because they obviously don't. I had someone say ABH and Black Radiance. I can say that Black Radiance does because they have a new bronzer and contour palette, but ABH doesn't. And even though I'm on their PR and I fucks with ABH, I'm going to be completely honest. ABH doesn't have a bronzer for someone that's deeper than my complexion, because I use the deepest shade in their bronzers. The name NYX came up. I use their contour palette. I feel like maybe someone who was a step or two below me might be able to use it, but other than that, no. Benefit Hoola bronzer. No, absolutely not. I can't use the new bronzer, so that tells you something. The Queen Collection bronzer. And that was a bronzer that a lot of people were using of my complexion, and unfortunately that bronzer is no longer sold, so it really does suck that that name is brought up so much and we can't readily buy it. But I believe, hopefully if I'm not mistaken, correct me if I'm wrong, the new full spectrum line from CoverGirl has a bronzer that's similar to it. I'm not sure, I haven't fully dived into that, but maybe. Fenty Mocha Mommy bronzer. I have that bronzer. That bronzer is more on the reddish side, so there are a few shades lighter than, or a few shades deeper than me can use that bronzer, but as Nimutane has showed in her video, it's not quite the bronzer that someone of her complexion needs. ABH contour kits. Now, again, love ABH, part of their PR list. However, their contours kits aren't deep enough. I can't use the deepest contour kit. I know someone deeper than me can't. The cream contour kit maybe, but a lot of people aren't fans of cream contouring. So obviously there's some things that need to be worked on. We're going to discuss that in a little bit. Profusion, no. Wet n Wild, no. ColourPop, and yes. I've never used ColourPop's bronzers, but a lot of people on the deeper range seem to be going towards those, so I'm assuming that they can. But again, I'm not too familiar with it. If you're someone who's my complexion or deeper and has tried the bronzers, let me know down in the comment section below, because that's not something I'm very familiar with. Shea Moisture Illuminating Powder. Yes, I remember that powder being around. I remember a lot of influencers back before like bronzer was a big discussion for our complexion. That was a product that was brought up a lot. So I know that that product does work. However, I don't know if that product's still available. I think it's in the same boat as the Queen powder from CoverGirl. So yeah, a lot of the big names that we brought up earlier, Fenty, ABH, Benefit, brands that were easy to reach for a lot of people, unfortunately do not carry the shades that are quite needed. And it's becoming more apparent that this is obviously a concern. The next question, for those of you who are in the deep and dark category, how often do you have, the next question is a question that I am very, very passionate about, and this kind of sparked the reason for this video as well. The next question was, for those of you who are in the deep, dark category, how often do you have to improvise to bronze and contour, i.e. using eyeshadows, foundations, concealers, etc.? The reason why this question is so important to me is because obviously I'm not that deep in complexion, you guys. For those of you who need a reference, I am 430 in Fenty Beauty. I am 360 in Maybelline. Obviously I'm not that deep in complexion. I'm only wearing foundation and concealer as we speak. There are a lot of products that I have on my table that we're going to get into that are geared specifically for foundation and concealer. However, I have to use them for contour. And after seeing someone like Nimutane having to use products like eyeshadows to contour, it really did bug me, and it really did spark the need to have this discussion. So with that in mind, a lot of my deep melanin brothers and sisters and everyone in between said foundations had to be used. The Bobbi Brown foundation stick, a couple of eyeshadow shades, cream contouring with the black Opal foundation stick, LA Girl Pro concealers, which is something that I have used in the past as well, black Radiance press powders, the brown sugar ColourPop eyeshadow palette, some oranges brown shades from a certain brand who is extremely problematic and won't be mentioned on my channel anymore, Chi. Black Opal ultra matte powder foundations. Obviously a lot of us have to improvise, and that's not entirely fair to us, because we shouldn't have to, like, I get it, makeup is an artistry and we can be creative. However, we shouldn't have to always feel as though we have to think outside the box just to do the same thing that someone who lighter than us can do with the snap. Like, it's not fair that someone can walk into a store and find a product off the shelf and then we have to go and manipulate products just to get the same effect. You get what I'm saying? Obviously it's not fair, and if you think it is, then leave your entitlement at the door, sis. Alright, and then the last question I asked in this series was what bronzers and or contours are you interested in trying but can't, and explain. Physician's Formula was a name that came up a lot because it's a drugstore product that a lot of people have claimed to use as like their holy grails, but unfortunately we don't have products like that. Marc Jacobs bronzers, they just released a new shade, but I honestly don't know how deep that shade runs, and for 2 shades at that price, Let's see, Benefit Hoola Bronzer. They obviously just extended their Hoola Bronzer range, but again, that is a bronzer that doesn't work for a lot of people. Milk Bronzer Sticks. Again, Milk products are very trendy, very, the products that everyone wants to reach for, can't use. Too Faced Bronzers. I think the biggest thing that I've seen out of this is definitely Physicians Formula and the Hoola Bronzers from Benefit. Those two tend to be the bronzers that a lot of people who are in that mid-range of bronzers that can always find something have talked about numerous times, and it's not quite fair for us, you know what I'm saying? And again, just because you're on a lighter spectrum doesn't necessarily mean the products work for you either. We see clearly that people with light complexions have a problem with things being too orange or things being too blue. So obviously there's a problem on both extremes of our range and spectrum, and it seems that the industry of contour and bronzer only seems to cater to those in that middle, that average range of customers who can be easily picked out. But just because any can be easily picked, that doesn't mean that the extremes on both ends don't matter. Hope that makes sense here. Alright, so obviously you guys have seen all of the responses we've gotten, and you see there's obviously an issue here. Bronzers and contours aren't treated the same way that concealers and foundations are treated. The discussion is starting to pick up, however, we haven't made progress. There's been a little progress within the past year thanks to brands like Fenty and Prime Beauty. However, the discussion still needs to be had. There's a lot of things that a lot of people don't know, including myself. Like I said, I didn't realize that people on the fair side of the spectrum have the issues of bronzers being too orange, contours being too blue. And on the opposite side of that, you see that people with deep complexions are struggling to find products that work for them and having to improvise with eyeshadows and foundations. And again, making products readily available for a mid group doesn't mean that those products are available for those on the light or deep spectrum. Obviously there's an issue here, obviously it needs to be fixed. And so now what I'm going to do is show you guys what I use. We're going to visually see why there's still an issue here. First, I'm going to show you guys what I use in terms of cream contours. I don't have any cream bronzers, so that speaks on something. We're going to start with the products that are necessarily geared for contours and stuff. I have the UOMA Beauty Double Take Sculpt and Strobe Sticks. I've talked about the UOMA Beauty products on my channel before, and we've given UOMA Beauty much praise for being a black-owned business that, after the wake of Fenty Beauty's initial launch, wanted to make sure that we keep the momentum of treating all complexions the same and catering to people. First, I'm going to swatch Black Pearl, and that is a rich chocolate color. That is the shade that I tend to reach for the most in terms of cream contour. We have Bronze Venus, which is the shade lighter than my foundation. My foundation is in the brown sugar range, so I don't have the brown sugar contour, which I assume would be my perfect match. Yeah, this is Bronze Venus right here. As you can see, Bronze Venus is a bit more red, so if anything, this would be my bronzer shade, if you will. And then the third shade we have is the Honey Honey shade, and this is a bit lighter and more pink. I don't know why I can't personally use that one shade. I have it for the highlight, honestly. But so as you can see, the UOMA shades have a decent range. Again, I'm sure that the brown sugar shade that goes in between these two works perfectly for me. So just know that's why I don't have it, because I didn't grab it, so whatever. The other shade that I have that's meant for contouring is the Fenty Beauty Max Sticks. This is what brown sugar looks more like. So this shade is in between the two that we have here, and it runs a bit on the red side, but because it blends out as a cream, I obviously do set it with a powder contour anyway. But I feel like this is one of the more easy shades to work with. The UOMA Beauty contour sticks are a bit more on the, not say oily side, but they're more blendable, but obviously have a bit more of an oil to it, and I'm not the biggest fan of that. But with the Fenty Beauty shade, it has more of a matte feel, similar to the foundation, so it works. Now here's where things get interesting. There are obviously other products that I have here that I use for contour, but they're not contour products. That's what I said. So the first product I have is the LA Girl Pro Concealer in the shade Mahogany. This, I feel, is the easiest concealer shade that I use. This shade is just cool enough to where it works on my complexion and it blends out beautifully. However, this is a concealer. So this is that shade. As you see, it's very cool tone. That's why I like this shade a lot. It's extremely cool tone. And I will say that these concealers are a bit more versatile, but it's not a contour. The other concealer shade that I have here is from the Beauty Bakerie Cake Face Concealers in the shade What's Frapping. And this shade is extremely dark and extremely rich. But if anyone's ever used Beauty Bakerie's cream products, then you know that they're waterproof. And if you don't blend this bad boy out within at least 10 seconds, you're not getting any luck out of it. So it's extremely deep and rich, but it's not the most easy to use product, if you will. Moving on into foundations. I also feel like foundation sticks tend to be a bit more on the versatile side, but again, it's not actually a contour product. So we have the Black Opal True Color foundation stick in the shade Ebony. This shade is not as deep as the other two, and it's a bit more on a red side, so this would be something I would probably use more in the winter as opposed to in the summer. But it gets the job done. Because it's an actual foundation, it is easier to blend out, but not a contour. I have the CoverGirl TruBlend Matte Made Foundation in the shade D90, which is the deepest shade in that range. This shade is actually a bit more on the neutral side. It's not that extremely cool toned, but because it is a matte foundation, I do like using it to blend out. And the consistency of it is a bit more buildable, sheer, easier to work with, so it's more of a forgiving shade. Again, not an actual contour shade. And then I have the L'Oreal Infallible 24-Hour Fresh Wear Foundation in the shade 545. I believe this is also the deepest shade. This shade is extremely red. So I rarely use this. However, because it's a fresh wear foundation and the fresh wear foundation is very light and easier to wear, this will be something I would use under my actual foundation on a day where I'm doing a very, very, very light beat and I don't want to wear a bunch of powders and things like that. So this is the fresh wear foundation. Like I said, this is extremely red. It's deep, but if I were to use an actual contour powder or something of that nature, I wouldn't reach for this color because it's not personally my favorite. Like I said, the shades that are more of my favorite are the Beauty Bakerie concealer shade, but again, you have to blend it out extremely fast. So with that being said, my ultimate favorite cream shade to use as contour would be the LA Girl Pro Concealer, because they're, one, extremely affordable, two, come in a great range. This shade is perfect because it is a cool tone gray shade. This is what I mean by gray. This isn't like ashy or what have you. This is the cool tone shade that I reach for. That is my favorite. If I could get a million products in this shade, contouring would be easy for me. But I just want to give you guys an idea of what cream products I use and how a lot of us have to improvise to find products that work for us, because unfortunately we don't have a lot of products that are catered to what we need them for. Now with that being said, there are products that I have here in front of me that are specifically contour and bronzer products, and we're going to see just how they work. What I'm going to do is I'm going to draw inspiration from Nima Tang. When she did her bronzer video, I actually talked to her. She gave me permission to do this, so it's fine. I don't want any juice coming from me. But basically, I'm just going to do a stripe of the contour and bronzers across my forehead. I have a lot of real estate, so obviously it's fine. But I'm going to do a swipe of that just so you can see what I look for in products, but also point out the fact that there's still a lot of flaws missing here. So up first, I have the Black Radiance True Complexion contour and bronzing palettes. I have the medium to dark palette, and then I have the newest dark to deep. So originally when I first had the medium to dark palette, I would use obviously the contour shade, the contour. This has been loved, clearly. And then I would mix the highlight and the bronzer shade, if you will, because I do like shimmering bronzers, but just to get you an idea, this is the contour shade. I want to do contour. Did I say? Yeah, contour on this side. That's the contour from the medium to dark palette. This is the newest contour from the dark to deep dark palette. I love this shade a lot. This is what I would want because it's cool tone. And I like the black Radiance palettes because they are extremely buildable, but also manageable. So I can shear this down. Like, it's extremely pigmented, but easy to shear down. So next up, I have the Beauty Bakerie Coffee and Cocoa palette. Now, this palette has a shade called Antidepresso, which is a bronzer shade. And as I've mentioned in past videos, Cashmere, who's the owner and CEO of Beauty Bakerie, made this palette so that her daughter, who is darker than her, can have something to contour and bronze and stuff like that with. Antidepresso is obviously a metallic bronzer. However, with the way that it runs so deep and a bit on the cooler side, I can use it as a contour. If I use it as a contour though, I'm not going to bronze because it has shimmer in it, and I usually have to go over it with like a face powder just to dull down the sheerness or the shimmering. So, and again, I would use that as a bronzer as well, but again, if I use it, I'm not doing anything else, and I have to like manipulate it, if you will. We have the Prime Beauty Brownzers, which are extremely revolutionary. Like, when this brand started hitting waves, we obviously saw that this is what we've been waiting for and what people have been needing. I understand that people don't like to bronze with contours or contour bronzers, but obviously when you don't have many options, you do what you can. This is the shade Chocolate Lady, which I could use as a bronzer if I wanted to, but I prefer to use as a contour. So as you can see, this shade is more on the red side, so this is a great bronzer for someone who is of a deeper complexion than me. Up next, we have the Makeup Geek Contour Powder in the shade Deal Breaker. Now with these powders, I spoke with Marlena before I actually conceived this video, and she was willing to be extremely helpful and sending some products to use for this video. So thank you, Marlena and the Makeup Geek team, for that. This is, like I said, this is their deepest, one of their deepest contour shades. They also carry a cool tone shade, which I'm interested in because Deal Breaker is considered warm tone, but when I look at it and use it, it honestly gives more of a cool tone. I think the initial, or the idea of this was more so like for someone who is more on the warm tone side, but has what needs a contour that's not going to be too cool and too much of a juxtaposition. So this looks really beautiful on me. This is a shade, this has been my go-to contour shade as of the past few weeks. It's extremely buildable, extremely blendable, and it's just warm enough to where it complements my skin, but it's still cool enough to give me the contour effect that I want. The next shade I have here is the Fenty Beauty Stalk'r Bronzer in Mocha Mami. Obviously it just made a lot of waves. Extremely red. Obviously it's not a contour, it's a bronzer. This is one of the shades that could flip-flop back and forth. This, again, is extremely red, and there have been a lot of different complexion YouTubers or influencers who have said that they could use this as either one, but I just wanted to show you. I'm gonna do it in the middle so you can see. So yeah, extremely red. Can I bronze with it? Yes. Can I contour with it? Yes. What do I prefer doing? Bronzer with it. So keep that in mind. Next shade we have is the Morphe Brontours. This is in the shade Showmance. I'm going to swipe the contour color first. Keep in mind this is the darkest bronzer that they carry. This is the contour shade. Like I told y'all, contours should typically are cool toned. I don't reach for this a lot simply because it's not what I want. So keep that. Up next I have the Pixi Strobe and Sculpt Highlighting and Contour Palette. This palette has contour and bronzing shades in it. There are actually two shades that I use out of this palette, and I go back and forth between them. You have the shade Queen, which Queen is a deep, this looks like it could be either or shade. I'm gonna swatch that right here. So that's a good in-between shade. This could actually be more of a matte bronzer for me, if you will. We also have the shade Boss Lady, and that's an obvious contour. On its own, it is a buildable shade. I don't know if you can see, it's right here. This is a very buildable shade, however, on its own, it's not enough. So I typically mix these two shades together to create my contour if I need it. We have a bronzer shade called Mink, and this is your shimmering bronzer. Can't see it, it's extremely pale. And with that being said, it does nothing for me. Nothing. It's my complexion shade. So I just wanted to keep that in mind for you guys. This is a recent favorite of mine. This is the NYX Highlight and Contour Pro palette. Obviously this palette comes with highlighting, powders, whatever. I only use the shade. So entire 8, well no, I use more than one shade. I use these shades to highlight sometimes, and I use that to do under my eyes sometimes. But in terms of contouring and bronzer, this is the only shade I reach for. These shades are too pale and don't have enough warmth for my complexion. So I reach for this very last shade. 7 and 8 are considered the sculpting shades of this palette. I can't do nothing with this shade. I'm not even gonna swatch it for you. Like, it looks pale. No. This is the shade I have to use, which is the hollow shade. So obviously it's made to contour. And again, this is something I've reached for a lot lately because it works so well. Right there. I don't know if you can see it, but it's a great shade because it's reddish, which typically works as contours for people of my complexion or deeper. But yeah, that's that. And then the last palette, or the last contour product that I use is the Morphe Pro Definition palette. This one. I love this palette so much because this was the first time that I ever found something that I could contour with that worked on my complexion. And this was 3, 4, 5 years ago at the most. Morphe doesn't sell this palette anymore, and I hate it so much. Morphe doesn't sell this palette anymore. They've created new contour palettes, if you will, but none of those palettes run this deep. This palette, I believe, was originally conceived as just like a warming palette, but there are cool tone shades in here, which is why I love it so much. Obviously, this is the shade that I love using the most. This is the contour shade. So I'm going to show you a swatch of that. That is so beautiful. Oh my god. I'm running out of space. I'll do it right here. Ah, that is beautiful. That is a deep shade. That's so beautiful. And what I typically do is that I will mix this shade with these two cool tone shades here just to increase how cool, or just to build up the cool intensity of it. And then I'll just use these two shades to do my nose contour, because when I do my nose contour is not as deep as my contour around the rest of my face. My nose contour is going to be either my bronzer, or it's going to be a contour shade that is not intense so that it doesn't look like a mess. So those are two shades I use. Again, this is my favorite palette to contour with, but unfortunately this palette is going to be, or this palette is discontinued. So once I run out of this, I don't know what I'm gonna do. Alright, so obviously you guys have seen all the products that I contour with. With contouring, I feel like compared to bronzing, the products that I have for contouring are a bit more easier to work with. And out of this range of shades that I have here, the Black Radiance powder, the Morphe powder, the NYX powder, and the Makeup Heat powders are going to be the products that I contour with the most. But as you can see, there's this broad idea of what deep contouring looks like. Just heads up. Alright, so we're going to switch over into bronzing. We're going to go back to the Black Radiance powders first, so you can see how they look. I'm taking the Sculpting shade out of the medium to deep palette. That shade is not enough for me. That's why I used to mix it with the highlight shade just to give it a shimmering glow, but there's no depth intensity to it. Now with the deep to dark, or the dark to deep palette, we have their Sculpting shade. Obviously, something worth bronzing with. Going back to the Morphe Brontour pan thing, we have the bronzer shade. And I will say that the bronzer shade is actually pretty beautiful. It's a shimmering bronzer, and I like that shade of glow. If I wanted to, I could use it as a highlight, but I would have to put some work into it, but I really do enjoy this shade. The bronzer that I use the most in terms of shimmering bronzers is going to be the L'Oreal True Match Lumi bronzer in the shade 3, Deep. However, this is the deepest shade out of these bronzers. I know that L'Oreal has relaunched their bronzers, and I believe they're the same colors. So unfortunately, there's not much variety, but this is one of my favorite bronzers. This bronzer has a reddish tone to it, and with my bronzers, especially during the summer, I really do like warm red bronzers like this. So that's why this is my favorite, but again, deepest shade. Up next, we have the other Prime Beauty bronzer. This is the bronzer in the shade Brownsville. This is what it looks like. Also a perfect bronzer. This is a matte bronzer though, so this is my perfect matte bronzer, if you will. Look at that. Oh, that's so beautiful. We have the next to darkest Fenty Beauty Stalk'r bronzer. This is in the shade Coconati, and this is the shade that I reach for the most out of the two that I have. As you can see right there, that's a really nice bronzer shade. Second favorite, this is the bronzer I would reach for more so in the winter. The Prime Beauty one is the one I reach for more so in the summer, because these two are pretty much the same undertone and shade, but the intensity of the Prime Beauty one is more so different now. I don't even know why I still have this. This is the Milani Baked Bronzer in the shade Soel. I don't know if this is the darkest one or not. It's number 5, so presumably it's the darkest one. Very pretty in terms of shimmering, but I feel like this in my opinion reminds me a lot of like what a skin finishing powder that I think it's MAC sells. The skin finish, yeah, the skin finishing powders that MAC sells. This gives me that vibe because it's not intense. There's not a lot of pigment, but it adds a beautiful depth to the skin. So this would be like a bronzer topper, if you will. Just throwing that out there. Up next is the Becca bronzer in the shade Maui Nights. This was one of the bronzers I was using quite often for a while. This is extremely red bronzer though. So very similar to that L'Oreal bronzer I was telling you guys about, but way more red. I can't be too heavy-handed with that. Like, my makeup obviously looks different if I get too heavy-handed. So this is something I use with a grain of salt. I have the Sleep Makeup Face Form Palette in Dark 375. This comes in a contour, a blush, and a highlight. Contour is not deep enough for me. Like, I'll show you a finger swatch of it. It's not as deep as I would like it to be. Let me see if I have room on my face anymore for it. Right there. This is more of a buildable shade, but I don't like using that shade that much. What I do, however, I will mix the blush shade actually, because the blush shade is this really beautiful copper shade. I'll mix that with the contour, and that's what I'll use to bronze with. So it's very similar to the, I don't know if you can see it. Hopefully you can see it. Did I go over it? No. Oh, no, I might have went over it. Whatever. No, because that's Becca. No.
A Diet Coke. No. Strawberry shake. No. Diet Coke. No. Both.
So I mix those two shades together, and it gives it enough depth to work as a bronzer on my complexion, but still gives that shimmering warmth that I need. This is a face sculpting palette by Makeup Geek. This includes one of the bronzers, one of the blushes, and one of the highlights. So we have the shade here called Burnished, which is a deep skin bronzer. When I saw this shade initially, I thought this wouldn't be good for me because it looks cool tone, it looks too light, but this is actually a really nice bronzer. This is one of those buildable bronzers that works a lot. So right here, right there, this, I don't know if you can see, this is fairly light at first, but like I said, this is a shade that I like to build up a lot, and as you can see, the intensity is starting to get there. This is one of those bronzers that's very forgiving. So if you're someone who likes to go heavy-handed with bronzers, that would be a great place to start. But you can definitely build it up to the intensity you need. Next, we have the ABH bronzer. This is the bronzer that everyone was talking about. This is in the shade Mahogany, the deepest shade. So obviously, people deeper than me can't use this. Norvina has said that they are working on extending this line, and I think it's going to be part of a collaboration coming up in the future. So keep that in mind. So right there, that's a really nice color. This is a color that I can use during the spring or winter, because this is extremely flattering shade, but again, Not a lot of people can use it. This is a new one that I've been playing with in terms of a bronzer. This is the Killawatt Foil Highlighter in the shade Penny for Your Thoughts from Fenty Beauty. Yes, Killawatt Foil, obviously. But I do like this. This is one of those shades that is extremely versatile. I've seen a lot of people use this as blush. And the first time I used it, I thought, oh my god, this is one of the most beautiful bronzers I've ever seen. This gives the very same vibes that the Antidepresso bronzer contour shade from Bakerie has. It's deep and very versatile. Like me! So, yes, it's extremely red. Because it has those reflective micas in it, I have to be very careful when using this, and sometimes I'll have to go over it with the Stalk'r bronzer, but I feel like this is a really nice shade that can be used for blush, bronzer, and highlight. It's stunning. I just wanted you guys to see these swatches just to see how much of a variety there is when it comes to contour and bronzers, and to show you guys how much further we still need to go when it comes to these products. A lot of these products that I just showed you guys are the deepest products that these brands carry. Like I said, the Brontour from Morphe, deepest shade I have. It's not going to work on nobody else. Anastasia's bronzer, not going to work on anybody else. L'Oreal, beautiful, not going to work on anybody else. The Fenty Beauty bronzers, as beautiful as these were and as great as the conception was, and as much as we love Rihanna, not going to work on many more people that are deeper than me. So there's an obvious problem here that still needs to be fixed. And I understand right now complexion is the wave, and I understand that concealers and foundations are what everyone's talking about, everyone's doing, but it's summer, you guys. A lot of us love bronzing during the summer. There's this conception that deep complexions don't bronze and contour, which is stupid. Like we do, like I need you guys to understand that the same thing that fair and medium and tan complexions do are the same thing that we like to do. So get this preconceived notion that we don't like to bronze and contour out your head, because we do. The idea is to sculpt using contour and to warm up the face using bronzer. We still want to be able to sculpt and warm our faces up. We still need that depth and perception in our faces, just like anybody else. Like, it's not that hard. Understand that a lot of the favorites of what people in that mid space have are not favorites of ours because we can't use it. And again, speaking on someone on the deep side, there's obviously a lack of products that we have, but on the fair and light side, there's still a problem over there. There's still the problem of products being too orange, problems being too blue. So the color is wrong over here, and then the depth is wrong over here. Like, obviously you guys can get it right here in this midsection. Obviously there are plenty of bronzers like Hoola and contours like the ABH kit that work, but why are you not expanding that? One of the things I did a few months ago was ask Marlena, and I asked Norvina, and I asked Jen, why is it that these brands have such a huge issue making products that flatter deep complexions? Like, and unfortunately, like, they don't like, a lot of people don't get it. Like, I don't understand why that's an issue. Like, it really bothered me seeing Nima Tang have to reach into her Morphe 39A palette just to find a contour shade. And it was an eyeshadow. So obviously these brands know how to make eyeshadows. They know how to make the actual color and pigment. Why are we not making those bronzers and contours? Why can't we just make bigger pans? Why can't we have it pressed differently so that it doesn't look too crazy? But I don't get it. Like, the shades are there. Every brand that we know has a neutral eyeshadow palette. Every brand we know has a warm eyeshadow palette. A lot of brands have cool tone eyeshadow palettes. If you can conceive those kind of eyeshadow palettes, why can you not conceive contours and bronzers that use these same colors and the same pigments to create those same depth and perceptions? And why is that hard? I don't get that. I really don't. Like, these brands know what they're doing. Just do better. Like, it's not hard. Like, it's there. The materials are literally right in front of you. So hopefully going into the rest of 2019 and going into 2020, these brands are understanding that there's still an issue of inclusion here. Inclusion doesn't stop with foundations and concealers. Inclusion continues to go on. There's, again, obviously the issue of bronzers and contours, but there's also issues of lipsticks. There's also issues of eyeshadows. There's issues with highlighters and blushes. And the problems don't stop where trends do. It's trendy to be inclusive with foundation and concealers. Take that trend and push it into making your brand better. Simple as that. I'm trying not to be ranty here. Hopefully I don't get too ranty. Hopefully this video wasn't too ranty, but obviously there's an issue. Obviously there are concerns that are still not being addressed here. So what is it going to take for brands to understand that we want and need more and we expect more? It's 2019. Beauty has been around for far too long. Black people have been around for forever. Pale people have been around for forever. Why are you not making products that work for us? Simple as that. So to these brands, take that effort that you're putting into your foundations and concealers and put them into the rest of your lines, okay? Alright, you guys, that is the end of my video. Thank you so much for watching. I truly do appreciate it. If you enjoyed this video, which, tell me why you wouldn't, then go ahead and give this video a huge thumbs up, like, and support. It means so much. Also, if you want to continue seeing my face on your YouTube feed, then go ahead and subscribe to my channel and hit that notification bell so that you don't miss the next time I upload. There's a lot. We're doing a lot of stuff. We're going to get stuff out. Also, make sure you guys are following me on all my social media accounts. That is Neon MUA on Instagram, Twitter, and Snapchat. Love to have you guys be a part of Five Eyes family. If there's anything that you guys want updates on, that's where you need to go. If you're wondering why I haven't been posting content, that's where you need to go. All the answers are there. Also, you guys, check out my podcast with King J Beauty, the What Girls Podcast. We post new episodes every Monday around 12 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We talk about literally any and everything under the sun. Talk about beauty, music, sometimes sports, but you know, that's hetero talk. But if you guys are interested in anything, whether it's submitting your topics or giving us ideas or what have you, check out the What Girls Podcast on Twitter, on Instagram. The link is going to be in our description, but definitely check us out there. And so far we've talked about a lot, and by the time this video goes up, there's a lot. Alright, you guys, that is the end of this video. Thank you so much for watching. I truly do appreciate it, and until next time, take care. Bye.